Good evening. I'm Arthur Bennett, and tonight I'd like to ask you a simple question. When was the last time you received a letter from HM Revenue and Customs? Perhaps it arrived in a plain brown envelope. Perhaps you glanced at the sender's name, sighed quietly, and placed it on the kitchen table to deal with another day. If that sounds familiar, you're certainly not alone. For many retirees across the United Kingdom, there's something about seeing the letters HMRC that creates an immediate sense of uncertainty. Even after retirement, even after decades of paying taxes honestly, even after leaving full-time work behind, many people still wonder, what could HMRC possibly want from me now? Some assume the letter must contain bad news. Others believe it must be a mistake. And quite a few decide they'll open it later, tomorrow, next week, when they're feeling less busy, or perhaps when they're feeling a little braver. But sometimes, waiting creates far more anxiety than the letter itself. Now, before we go any further, I'd like to make something absolutely clear. Receiving a letter from HMRC does not automatically mean you've done anything wrong. In fact, many letters are completely routine. Some explain changes to your tax code. Some provide information about your pension income. Some ask you to review details already held on record. Others simply keep you informed about changes that may affect your tax affairs. The important thing isn't to panic, it's to understand what the letter is saying. And that's exactly what we'll be discussing this evening. Because retirement doesn't always mean the end of tax matters. In many ways, it simply means they're different. John is 72 years old. He spent more than 40 years working on Britain's railways. He was reliable, hard-working, the sort of man who rarely took a sick day. He believed in paying his taxes. He believed in doing things properly. When retirement finally arrived, he felt he had earned the slower pace of life. His mornings became peaceful. He enjoyed reading the newspaper with a cup of tea. He looked after his garden. He met old colleagues every Thursday morning for breakfast. Life was comfortable, not extravagant, but comfortable. His state pension arrived each month. His workplace pension arrived shortly afterwards. The mortgage had long since been paid. For the first time in decades, life felt predictable. Then one Tuesday morning, a brown envelope landed on the doormat. Across the top, 4 familiar letters. HMRC. John picked it up, turned it over, and placed it on the kitchen counter. "I'll deal with that later," he muttered. After all, he wasn't working anymore. He wasn't running a business. He wasn't selling property. Surely there couldn't be anything urgent. Later became tomorrow. Tomorrow became next week. The envelope remained unopened. Every time John walked past it, he thought about opening it. Every time, he decided against it. The strange thing was, the longer he ignored the letter, the larger it seemed to become. Not physically, emotionally. His imagination started filling in the blanks. Perhaps I've underpaid tax. Maybe I filled something in incorrectly. Could I owe money? The unopened envelope became a source of worry, not because John knew what it contained, but because he didn't. Eventually, his daughter visited for Sunday lunch. As they cleared the table, she noticed the envelope. "Dad, have you opened this?" John smiled awkwardly. "Not yet." She looked at the date. It had arrived almost 3 weeks earlier. Together they opened it. Inside, there wasn't a fine, there wasn't an accusation, there wasn't a demand for immediate payment. Instead, it explained a routine adjustment to his tax code because of changes in how his pension income was being taxed. The letter simply explained what had changed. And why. Nothing more. John looked at his daughter and laughed. "I've spent 3 weeks worrying about something that took 3 minutes to read." Perhaps you've experienced something similar, not necessarily with HMRC, but with paperwork you've been meaning to open. It's a very human reaction. When something feels complicated or unfamiliar, many of us postpone dealing with it. We tell ourselves we'll feel more confident tomorrow. But tomorrow has a habit of arriving with new distractions. And before we know it, weeks have passed. John's story isn't unusual. In fact, it's one of the reasons I wanted to make this video. Because retirement doesn't end your relationship with HMRC, it simply changes the kinds of questions you may be asked. And understanding those questions can replace uncertainty with confidence. Tonight, We'll look at why retirees continue receiving HMRC letters, which types of correspondence are most common, the misunderstandings that catch thousands of people every year, and 5 practical habits that can help you stay organised, informed and prepared throughout retirement. Because the goal isn't to fear official letters. The goal is to understand them. Before we go any further, I'd like to ask you another question. How many people believe that retirement means the end of dealing with HMRC? If you're nodding your head, you're certainly not alone. It's a perfectly understandable assumption. After all, you've stopped working, you're no longer receiving a monthly salary. The daily routine has changed. So, naturally, many people believe their tax affairs become much simpler. Sometimes they do, but they don't disappear. And this is where thousands of retirees become confused. One of the biggest misunderstandings about retirement is believing that your state pension is the only income that matters. For many people, it isn't. Some retirees receive a workplace pension. Others receive income from a private pension. Some continue working 1 or 2 days each week. Others receive rental income from a property. Some have investment income. Each person's financial situation is different. And because every situation is different, HMRC sometimes needs to make adjustments to ensure the correct amount of tax is collected. That doesn't automatically mean you've paid too much. It doesn't automatically mean you've paid too little. Very often, it's simply part of keeping your tax record accurate. Unfortunately, the moment people see those 4 letters, HMRC, many assume the worst. John certainly did. After finally opening his letter, he admitted something that many retirees quietly confess. "I thought they were coming after me." His daughter smiled. "Dad, it's just information." That single sentence changed the way John looked at official correspondence. Because information isn't the same as trouble, and understanding that difference removes a tremendous amount of unnecessary worry. Over the years, I've noticed 3 assumptions that repeatedly cause unnecessary stress among retirees. Let's begin with the first. Misunderstanding number 1. I'm retired, so I don't pay tax anymore. Many people are surprised to learn that retirement doesn't automatically mean the end of income tax. Depending on your circumstances, pension income may still have tax implications. That's one reason why HMRC continues communicating with retirees. Not because retirement itself is a problem, but because retirement income still forms part of your overall financial picture. Understanding that simple fact helps explain why official letters continue arriving long after you've left the workplace. Misunderstanding number 2. If HMRC contacts me, I've done something wrong. This is perhaps the most damaging misunderstanding of all. Receiving correspondence from HMRC isn't evidence that you've made a mistake. Many letters simply explain changes. Others confirm information already held. Some request clarification. Others notify you about adjustments to your tax code. Think about your bank. Your bank writes to you. Your pension provider writes to you. Your insurance company writes to you. Communication is part of managing important financial matters. HMRC is no different. Misunderstanding number 3. I'll deal with it later. This one sounds harmless, and we've all done it. A letter arrives, you're making lunch. The telephone rings. The grandchildren visit. Life gets busy. I'll open it tomorrow. Tomorrow becomes next week. Soon. Weeks have passed. The problem isn't always the letter itself. The problem is allowing uncertainty to grow. John admitted that the unopened envelope caused far more anxiety than the letter ever did. Once he finally read it, he wished he'd opened it the day it arrived, not because it contained wonderful news, but because it contained clear information. Information replaced imagination, and imagination often creates far bigger problems than reality. Because retirement should be about confidence, not constant uncertainty. One of the greatest gifts you can give yourself is organisation, knowing where your pension documents are, keeping tax letters together, reading official correspondence when it arrives, making a note of anything you don't understand, then asking questions if you need to. There is absolutely no shame in asking for clarification. Retirement legislation, tax rules, pension rules. These subjects change over time. No one expects you to remember every detail. The important thing isn't knowing everything. The important thing is knowing where to find reliable information. John eventually placed a small folder in his study. Inside it, he kept every important document: HMRC letters, pension statements, bank correspondence, insurance policies, his will, contact details for organisations he regularly dealt with. It wasn't complicated, it wasn't expensive, but it transformed the way he managed retirement. Whenever a new letter arrived, it went straight into the folder. No piles of unopened envelopes, no searching through drawers months later. No unnecessary worry, just one organised place for everything important. Sometimes, the best retirement decisions aren't dramatic, they're remarkably ordinary. Small habits, repeated consistently, producing peace of mind year after year. But there is one question that almost every retiree eventually asks. What should I actually do when an HMRC letter arrives? Should you panic? Should you call someone immediately? Should you ignore it? Or is there a calmer, more sensible approach? That's exactly what we'll explore next. Now, if you've been watching from the beginning, you might be thinking, Arthur, this all makes sense, but what should I actually do when an HMRC letter arrives? That's an excellent question, because retirement isn't about becoming a tax expert. It's about developing a few simple habits that make life easier. You don't need to understand every page of tax legislation. You don't need to memorize complicated rules. You simply need a sensible routine. So tonight, I'd like to share 5 practical steps that every UK retiree can take whenever official correspondence arrives. These aren't complicated. Most of them cost nothing. But together, they can save a great deal of unnecessary stress. Step 1. Open the letter promptly. I know, this sounds obvious, yet it's probably the hardest step of all. Why? Because many people worry about what they might find. John certainly did. For almost 3 weeks, he carried the worry without knowing whether there was actually anything to worry about. Once he finally opened the envelope, he discovered the situation was far less dramatic than he'd imagined. Most official letters simply explain something. Some ask you to review information, others confirm changes that have already taken place. The sooner you understand what's inside, the sooner you can decide whether any action is needed. And if no action is required, you can stop worrying. Step 2. Read the letter carefully before reaching conclusions. One mistake people often make is reading only the first few lines. They see unfamiliar words, a reference number, perhaps a tax code, and immediately assume the worst. Instead, read the entire letter slowly. Sometimes the explanation you're looking for appears several paragraphs later. If there's anything you don't understand, highlight it. Make a note. There's nothing wrong with taking your time. Good financial decisions rarely come from rushing. Step 3. Keep all important documents together. I'd like you to imagine something. Suppose 6 months from now. You need to look back at an earlier HMRC letter. Would you know exactly where to find it? Or would you begin searching kitchen drawers, cupboards, old filing cabinets, and boxes in the loft? Organisation isn't exciting, but it is incredibly valuable. A simple folder labelled retirement documents can save hours of frustration. Inside, you might keep HMRC correspondence, state pension information, workplace pension statements, bank documents, insurance policies, your will, lasting power of attorney documents, important telephone numbers. Having everything together makes retirement administration much simpler, and if your family ever needs to help you, they'll know exactly where to begin. Step 4. Ask questions. If something isn't clear, there's a phrase I've heard many times over the years. I didn't want to bother anyone. Perhaps you've said something similar yourself. But asking questions isn't bothering people. If something is unclear, it's perfectly reasonable to seek clarification. Retirement rules can be complicated. Tax codes change. Personal circumstances change. No one expects you to understand every detail immediately. Whether you speak with HMRC directly, a qualified financial advisor, or another appropriate professional, sometimes one conversation can remove weeks of uncertainty. Remember, there is a significant difference between asking questions and making assumptions. Questions usually lead to answers. Assumptions often lead to unnecessary worry. Step 5. Review your retirement paperwork. Once a year, many people service their boiler every year. They have regular dental checkups. They renew insurance policies. Yet they never spend an hour reviewing their retirement paperwork. Imagine setting aside one afternoon each year. A quiet afternoon, perhaps with a cup of tea. Review your pension information. Read any important letters you've received. Check that your contact details are correct. Confirm that your important documents are organised. It doesn't need to become an all-day project. Even a short annual review can provide tremendous peace of mind. Several months after opening that first HMRC letter, John told his daughter something that made her smile. "You know, brown envelopes don't frighten me anymore." She laughed. "What changed?" "I realised they aren't trying to ruin my retirement. Most of the time. They're simply trying to tell me something." What changed wasn't HMRC. The letters looked exactly the same. What changed was John's confidence. He understood that reading information calmly was far better than imagining the worst, and confidence is one of the greatest gifts retirement can offer. Because retirement should be enjoyed, not spent worrying about unopened envelopes sitting quietly on the kitchen table. But there is one final lesson I'd like to share. It has nothing to do with tax codes, nothing to do with paperwork, nothing to do with official letters. In many ways, it's the most important lesson of all, because retirement isn't just about organising documents, it's about protecting your peace of mind. And that's exactly where we'll finish our discussion tonight. Before we finish tonight, I'd like to tell you what happened to John several months later. One rainy Thursday afternoon, another brown envelope arrived. Once again, the sender was HMRC. John looked at it, smiled, made himself a cup of tea, sat down at the kitchen table, and opened it immediately. No hesitation, no worrying, no imagining the worst. Just a quiet confidence that whatever the letter contained, he could deal with it. As it happened, the letter simply confirmed an adjustment that had already been made to his tax record. It required no immediate action. John folded the letter neatly, placed it in his retirement folder, and carried on with his afternoon. The entire process took less than 5 minutes. Later that evening, his daughter called. "Any more exciting letters today, Dad?" John laughed. "Nothing exciting at all." And that's the point. That simple sentence stayed with me, because most retirement administration isn't dramatic. It isn't about emergencies, it isn't about crises, it's about ordinary decisions, made consistently, over time. And those ordinary decisions often make retirement far less stressful. If there's one message I'd like you to remember from tonight's discussion, it's this. Receiving a letter from HMRC is not a reason to panic. It's a reason to pause, to read, to understand, and if necessary, to ask questions. Nothing more, nothing less. Far too many retirees spend days, sometimes weeks, worrying about something they haven't even read. Our imagination has a remarkable ability to create problems that don't exist, but facts have a remarkable ability to restore peace of mind. That's why preparation matters. Not because something terrible is about to happen, but because being organised makes everyday life easier. Before we say goodnight, I'd like to leave you with another simple checklist. Not because you must complete everything this evening, but because every small step helps build confidence. Ask yourself, check mark, do I open official letters promptly? Check, do I keep important retirement paperwork in one place? Check, do I understand where my retirement income comes from? Check, do I know who to contact if something isn't clear? Check, have I reviewed my pension and tax information recently? Check, have I spoken with my family about where important documents are kept? If you've answered yes to most of those questions, you're already building good retirement habits. If you've answered no to several, don't be discouraged. Every organised retirement begins with one small decision. Perhaps tonight, that decision is simply to tidy one folder, or read one letter, or make one phone call. Small actions often create the greatest peace of mind. When people think about retirement, they often think about numbers, savings, pensions, investments, property. Those things certainly matter. But after speaking with hundreds of retirees over the years, I've realised something. The happiest retirees aren't always the wealthiest. They're often the best prepared. They know where their documents are. They understand their finances. They've had important conversations with their families. And because of that, they spend less time worrying and more time enjoying retirement. That's something money alone cannot buy. When John ignored that first HMRC letter, nothing terrible happened, but something important did happen. He allowed uncertainty to occupy his thoughts for nearly 3 weeks. When he finally opened it, he realised the letter wasn't the problem. His assumptions were, since then, every official letter has been opened the same day it arrives. Not because John enjoys paperwork, he certainly doesn't, but because he now understands something many retirees eventually discover. Information is almost always less frightening than uncertainty, and confidence grows from understanding. So this week, I'd like to leave you with a simple challenge. If you have an unopened letter sitting on a table, a shelf, or tucked inside a drawer, take 10 minutes, make yourself a cup of tea, sit somewhere quiet, and read it. It may simply confirm that everything is exactly as it should be, or it may raise a question worth exploring. Either way, you'll replace uncertainty with knowledge, and that's always a worthwhile investment. Thank you for spending part of your evening with me. I truly appreciate your time. If you found today's discussion helpful, I'd be honoured if you joined our growing community here at Arthur Retires UK. Every week, we explore the retirement questions that matter most to people across the United Kingdom. From the state pension to HMRC, pension credit, inheritance tax, care home fees, and the practical decisions that help protect the future you've worked so hard to build. If there's a retirement topic you'd like me to cover in a future video, please leave it in the comments below. I read every comment personally, and many of our future discussions will be inspired by your questions. Until next time, I'm Arthur Bennett. Take care of yourself, take care of the people you love, and remember, the most confident retirees aren't the ones who never receive difficult letters. They're the ones who understand them. Good night.